It began with a sound on the other side of the wall, so faint at first it could have been imagination, an echo of wind, the lodge settling into itself. Then it came again, steadier this time, a ripple of laughter, a pause that lingered a second too long, and then a pattern that made us both stop moving at the exact same moment. He turned to me, eyebrows lifting just slightly, the unspoken request already written across his face. Say you didn't hear it. Make it nothing. But I didn't. I met his eyes instead, and in that small suspended second, something subtle rearranged itself between us. Not alarm, not discomfort, something quieter, permission, maybe curiosity, or the first spark of a dare neither of us had planned. By the time the lights dimmed for the evening, the air felt different, charged in a way I couldn't quite explain. And when the knock eventually came, neither of us reached out to stop what might follow. To you, my beautiful viewers, some stories begin with curiosity and end by changing everything. This is one of those stories. Listen closely because not every door is meant to stay closed. Now let's begin. The first night at Alder Ridge Lodge felt calmer than we'd expected. Snow had already begun to fall by the time we hauled our bags inside. Soft, unhurried flakes that pressed silence against the windows and swallowed the world beyond them. The room smelled faintly of pine resin and old timber. A fire burned low in the corner, crackling just loudly enough to soften the quiet between us. We hadn't talked much since dinner, not because anything was wrong. It was the comfortable hush of two people who knew each other well enough to let silence do the talking. I curled beneath a heavy knit throw with a warm mug cup between my palms, watching the wind trace slow patterns across the glass. The flame shifted. The floor settled. And then there it was again. A sound that didn't belong to us. At first it was easy to dismiss. A chair dragged. A log shifting in the hearth. But then came laughter. Brief, unmistakable, and not ours. He glanced up from his phone. Did you hear that? I nodded. Next door. We both remembered the woman at check-in, the apologetic smile she'd offered as she mentioned the building's charming acoustics. At the time it had sounded like a harmless quirk. Now it felt like an invitation no one had formally extended. The sound returned closer, more deliberate. Another laugh, softer this time. Then a pause, the kind that stretches just long enough for the mind to fill in the space it leaves behind. He raised his glass and looked at me over the rim. We didn't speak. The moment didn't ask for words. Then it began. Slow, measured, impossible to misread. I didn't tense. I didn't flinch. I simply became aware of the room, of him, of the way attention sharpens when something unexpected insists on being noticed. He leaned back into the couch, expression carefully neutral. But his fingers tapped against the glass in a steady rhythm that matched what drifted through the wall. I said nothing. There was nothing to say. The sounds weren't loud. They didn't need to be. A muted thud, a faint creak, a breath released at just the wrong or right moment. Once heard, it was impossible to ignore. A voice dipped lower. A sound that might have been a name brushed the edge of hearing. My pulse shifted, not from shock or embarrassment, but from something more elusive. Anticipation perhaps, or recognition. He shifted beside me. I felt the weight of his attention without turning to look. He was waiting for me to break the spell, to suggest the television, to name it awkward and end it neatly. Instead, I tugged the blanket higher, letting it settle across both our legs. His hand brushed mine beneath the fabric. He didn't pull away. The fire popped softly. The cadence behind the wall slowed, deepened. It wasn't just movement now. It was closeness. The sense of two people sharing something private, and how easily that intimacy spilled into our space. He exhaled slowly, still no words. I watched the flames dance, pretending not to. Notice how warm my skin felt, how the room no longer seemed cold. His arm draped across the back of the couch, fingers grazing my shoulder, not claiming, not urging, just there. I didn't move away. We sat together, listening to something neither of us had expected, telling ourselves it meant nothing at all. The storm thickened overnight. By morning, snow pressed hard against the windows. The world beyond them reduced to white and gray. The wind sharpened as the day wore on, rattling the old frame of the lodge and sealing us inside. We spent the afternoon reading, picking at leftovers, orbiting each other in quiet ways we didn't name. We didn't mention the night before, but the silence between us had changed. It felt stretched thin, fragile in the best way. Every glance lingered. Every accidental brush carried weight. Just before 6 o'clock, a staff member knocked to warn us the power might go out. "It happens," she said lightly. "But the fireplace lounge stays lit and there's wine." It sounded like a joke almost. We forgot about it until everything went dark. The heater cut first, then the lights blinked out one by one, leaving the room hushed and humming. The fire became our only illumination, shadows stretching and retreating with every flicker. "Well," I said, closing my book. "I guess that's our cue." He stood, rolling his shoulders. "The main room." I nodded, pulling on a thick cardigan, wrapping it tighter than necessary. The hallway glowed faintly with battery sconces, a warm trail of light leading toward the shared lounge. Voices drifted toward us. Easy, familiar. And then I heard her. We paused at the corner. The neighboring couple sat near the fire, relaxed, close, sharing a glass between them. She looked up as we entered, her expression open, almost expectant, like she'd known we would come. I recognized her laugh immediately. She shifted to make space, gesturing to the cushions across from them. "Power always cuts out once or twice," she said easily. "They keep the good stuff back here for moments like this." Her partner lifted the bottle in agreement. "Help yourselves." I glanced at my husband. He gave a slight nod, his face composed, his posture anything but relaxed. We sat, not too close, not too far. Close enough to feel the fire's warmth, to notice how it caught the light in her hair. The ends were still damp, as if she'd showered not long before. Her sweater slipped casually off one shoulder. She didn't bother fixing it. For a while we talked like strangers do. Where we were from, what brought us up the mountain, how early the winter had arrived. Their names were Leah and Mark. I committed them to memory without meaning to. Mark poured more wine, then he smiled. "By the way, sorry if we were a little noticeable last night. The walls don't offer much privacy." My husband cleared his throat, a sound that tried to pass as a laugh. He studied his glass. I didn't look away from her. "I thought it was charming," I said quietly. Her smile deepened. "You didn't knock." "No," I replied. "We didn't." Something passed between the four of us, unspoken, undeniable. "Would it have changed anything?" she asked lightly. I didn't answer. I took a sip and let the warmth spread. The fire cracked. Outside, the storm held its breath. Inside, the silence filled with meaning. Later, when the fire burned low and the room grew quieter, we didn't rush anything. No one did. Conversations slowed. Glances lingered. The world narrowed to the space we shared and the choices we hadn't named. At some point I realized how close we were. How the air itself seemed to hum. It felt less like something beginning and more like something being acknowledged. There were moments when time seemed to fold in on itself. When a look lasted longer than expected, when a touch meant more than it should have. When the room held its breath and waited, and then gently, deliberately, we let the moment carry us as far as it would. What followed didn't need words. It didn't need explanation. There was warmth and closeness, shared awareness, a quiet surrender to what had already been building. When it ended softly, not with urgency but with understanding. Later still,